Hello, I'm Mark Gillard, Orientation and Mobility Services Manager with Guide Dogs for the Blind. On behalf of GDB, welcome to this educational video about developing travel skills for guide dog mobility. Compared to cane travel, guide dog mobility involves less tactile input than what is available with the cane. For this reason, it's very important to develop those non-tactile travel skills and sensory awareness involved with guide dog mobility. This video presents a sequenced instructional program that concentrates on the development of kinesthetic, auditory, time distance, and non-tactile sensory input for guide dog mobility. With the majority of students now training at Guide Dogs for the Blind having residual vision, the video covers teaching methods applicable to totally blind students and those with remaining vision.
Teaching auditory, kinesthetic, and time-distance skills while developing spatial awareness, initial training environment, instructional methods, and functional vision assessment. If possible, begin the instructional program indoors. Ideally, the initial training environment should include long, straight hallways to assist the student with orientation. Having access to a series of doorways, intersecting corridors, and open spaces like a foyer or cafeteria will assist the student to attend to sound and develop their auditory skills. If a suitable indoor environment isn't available, an outdoor environment that includes building lines, recessed areas, laneways, and spaces between buildings can be used. Whatever training environment is selected, it should not be distracting or confusing to enable a student to feel comfortable and concentrate easily while developing their skills. Instruction should begin using Human Guide to allow the instructor to engage with the student as they move through space. This will bring cooperation and a sense of immediacy to developing sensory awareness and learning a skill. The use of Human Guide will also facilitate a functional assessment of residual vision if the student is partially sighted.
Yellowish kind of thing. It's about waist height with maybe black on the top. Okay.
The assessment should include a discussion about the use of partial or total occlusion. Occlusion will assist the partially sighted student to understand the relevance of non-tactile travel methods in guide dog mobility and the importance of developing these skills. Kinesthetic awareness and skills training. In order for a guide dog team to move through the environment smoothly, the handler must be able to respond to the movements of the guide dog and maintain following position. Therefore, kinesthetic awareness and proprioception are very important. Human Guide will teach the student how to follow and respond to changes in pace and direction while maintaining following position. The student should learn to apply these skills in a variety of situations, such as negotiating pedestrians and moving through crowded hallways or cafeterias, for example. Auditory awareness and skills training. Guide dog mobility involves a reduction in tactile input compared to what is available with the cane. The primary sources of tactile information are what can be felt underfoot and received through the harness handle. Therefore, a student's awareness of sound is vitally important to develop for guide dog travel. For example, the student should be taught to use their hearing to detect openings such as doorways, intersecting corridors, open spaces, and the presence of walls and building lines. Auditory landmarks should also be emphasized. To facilitate skill development, travel should initially be limited to simple exercises rather than requiring the student to learn a specific route. This will keep the student focused on developing their skills rather than on maintaining orientation. Time distance spatial awareness and orientation skills training. When the student develops an awareness of auditory information, time-distance estimation and other non-tactile strategies can be introduced. In guide dog mobility, the handler is responsible for navigating a route and giving directions to the dog to reach a destination.
We need to make a left turn at the intersecting hallway.
That's correct.
Asking the student to direct the instructor is a good precursory exercise to practice directing a guide dog through space. Transition from total or partial occlusion with partially sighted students. If instruction has used occlusion, the timing of when to have the student incorporate their residual vision is important. The opportune time is after the student has gained sufficient experience traveling without the use of their residual vision and has made good progress acquiring non-tactile travel skills. Using human guide is an effective teaching strategy to build a bridge between traveling well occluded and traveling with residual vision. The instructor can provide feedback about how the student's travel is affected by their vision and how it could influence a guide dog. For example, relying on vision instead of using kinesthetic and proprioceptive feedback could result in the student overwalking the instructor and not responding to directional changes. Both of these behaviors are problematic to safe and effective guide dog mobility. Introducing the cane. Once the non-tactile skills are sufficiently reinforced, they can be incorporated into cane travel. Simple skill-based exercises can progress to the student learning specific routes. It may be necessary to modify the student's cane technique to de-emphasize tactile information. For example, constant contact may be replaced with touch technique to de-emphasize tactile information about the ground surface. This will assist the student to adapt to less tactile input and practice non-tactile travel strategies. The student should also practice turns and how to maintain orientation without relying on tactile information. Use of tactile maps will develop concepts that are useful for orientation in new environments. For the partially sighted student, the use of occlusion can once again be considered to facilitate the transfer of skills from human guide to cane travel. Once the student has transferred their non-tactile skills to cane travel well occluded, they can progress to applying these skills traveling with their residual vision. Transferring the instructional program outdoors. Teaching auditory, kinesthetic, and time-distance skills while developing spatial awareness. As with indoor travel, the instructor should initially use human guide to teach the student to refer to sound while stationary and while in motion. For the partially sighted student, occlusion is an option once again. Training can begin on a residential street with constant traffic flow without a parking lane. Instruction should target 1. Developing an awareness of traffic sounds. 2. Learning to assess the distance to traffic. 3. The concepts of parallel and perpendicular alignment. 4. Using sounds to align while stationary and when moving. To teach the student to recognize and interpret the intensity of traffic sounds, the instructor can guide them toward and away from traffic. Return to sound exercises where the student is guided away from traffic and directs the instructor back to the sidewalk will teach them how to use traffic sounds to maintain orientation and problem solve. Instruction can progress to traveling along streets with and without a parking lane. This will provide a variety of traffic sounds, allowing the student to experience a range of sound locations and intensities. The student also needs to learn to use traffic to recognize when they are approaching an intersection by interpreting the sounds vehicles make when they slow down, accelerate, stop, or turn a corner. Time-distance exercises can be introduced during block travel. The student can communicate when they have walked various distances, a house length or half the block, for example. A handler's ability to estimate time and distance is important in guide dog travel for a number of reasons. For example, it prevents unnecessary stops during a route, like the student mistaking the slope of a driveway with the end of a block and stopping the guide dog unnecessarily, or becoming disoriented. Time-distance skills are also used by guide dog users while learning new routes, and to assist them to respond confidently to directional changes initiated by their guide dogs. Integrating skills and abilities into cane travel. Instruction should be targeted initially toward integrating the auditory and non-tactile skills into cane travel rather than developing specific routes. Once again, the initial use of occlusion can be considered with a partially sighted student. Ideally, the student should begin with rectilinear travel, starting with simple street crossings, then progressing to double crossings. The student needs to develop their ability to walk a straight line without relying upon tactile information, like using the cane to shoreline. Guide dog users don't have access to shorelines during travel, so continual emphasis needs to be placed on using non-tactile travel skills to walk a straight line while remaining oriented. Instruction should incorporate the use of traffic sounds to align at intersections, walk a straight line during crossings, and how to detect and recover from veers. If the student veers during a crossing and fails to detect it, the instructor should provide assistance and ensure safety. The reason for the veer and how to correct it should be discussed. As the student progresses, the goal is to have them independently detect and recover from veers. Completing single and double crossings regulated by stop signs and traffic lights will facilitate the development of skills which will allow the student to travel in new environments. 1. Intersection analysis and understanding traffic patterns. 2. Parallel and perpendicular alignment. 3. 90-degree turns. 4. Walking with and against the flow of parallel traffic and using the corresponding traffic sounds. Time-distance estimation skills and spatial awareness can continue to be reinforced and developed. For example, when the student thinks they have traveled half a block, they can raise their hand to inform the instructor. As the student progresses, it is important they learn to apply their abilities in new environments. This can be achieved by the student planning different routes, developing an accurate mental representation, and executing the routes accurately. The student will learn to generalize their skills, develop problem-solving capacities, and gain confidence. Drop-off exercises can be an effective teaching strategy to further develop these abilities. In time, the student needs to progress to developing sufficient and purposeful routes for a guide dog in their home area. This will result in the student advancing toward their goal of traveling to a guide dog organization to train, where they will need to transfer their skills to new environments. Integrating skills and abilities into travel with Juno. Juno exercises provide a practical way for the student to develop their non-tactile skills and dynamic orientation abilities in a guide dog mobility context. Refer to the GDB Juno education video for a detailed instructional guide about the Juno exercise. Depending on the student, Juno can progress in one of two ways. The first option is to follow the same progression as in previous stages, and initially limit travel to simple exercises rather than having the student learn a specific route. The second option is to begin on specific routes the student has developed with the cane to utilize their orientation. The use of occlusion for the partially sighted student would follow the same progression as in previous stages. Some key areas that Juno exercises will develop. 1. An awareness of movement in space, a course of direction, and dynamic orientation skills. 2. The ability to keep a light pull on the Juno handle. 3. The student's ability to coordinate their own movements with a guide dog and to maintain following position. 4. The ability to adjust walking pace and avoid obstacles. 5. Flexibility, balance, and ease of following. The nature of guide dog mobility involves the guide dog avoiding most obstacles by briefly deviating from the line of travel to clear an object and then returning to the original line. The student needs to learn to recognize the difference between a line change required to go around an obstacle and a change in direction. The ability to place directional changes into context by using non-tactile information is important to develop in preparation for a guide dog. The student will need to decide if a future guide dog's travel line is accurate and whether to follow or redirect the dog. Juno exercises allow the student to be introduced to various types of directional changes and possible guide work errors to develop detection abilities and recovery strategies. For example, the student needs to learn to notice and correct a change in direction associated with failing to stop at an intersection by unintentionally rounding a corner. Or crossing a street without stopping at the down curb. In situations with little traffic, the student must learn to rely almost entirely on kinesthetic and time-distance abilities. For example, perceiving a veer to the left or right. Arriving at an intersection at an angle. Or crossing a street diagonally. In situations where traffic is constant, the student can learn to use a combination of auditory and kinesthetic input as well as time-distance estimation. Juno exercises should continue to reference sound and build upon previously developed non-tactile skills in a range of travel situations. For example, having the student learn to cross open spaces like gas station driveways. Use traffic sounds to return to the sidewalk after veering. Locating the sidewalk after exiting a building. Learning to maintain or correct the line of travel while crossing a wide street. And how to travel in areas that have rounded corners or lack sidewalks.
Hello again. We hope this video has laid out a clear, sequenced program emphasizing the non-tactile travel skills that are essential for preparing someone for guide dog mobility. On behalf of GDB, thank you as orientation mobility specialists and blindness professionals for supporting us to carry out our important mission. If you have any questions, feel free to contact me or one of our instructors by calling 800-295-4050 or by emailing at the address information@guidedogs.com. You can also check out our website at www.guidedogs.com, which has very useful information as well.